August 25, 1991, Spa-Francorchamps, Belgium. A 22-year-old German driver named Michael Schumacher sat in a Formula One car for the first time in his life, preparing for his debut Grand Prix. He had never driven this circuit before. He had never driven a Formula One car in a race before. Most people in the paddock had never even heard his name before. In 48 hours, everyone in motorsport would know exactly who Michael Schumacher was. And in 49 hours, the biggest transfer battle in Formula One history would begin for a driver who hadn't even finished his first race. The story began not with Schumacher, but with Bertrand Gachot, Jordan's regular driver, who made a catastrophic mistake that had nothing to do with racing. In London, during a road rage incident, Gachot sprayed CS gas at a taxi driver. The French-Belgian driver was arrested, charged with assault, and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Suddenly, Jordan Grand Prix had an empty seat for the Belgian Grand Prix with just 2 weeks' notice. They needed a replacement driver immediately. Eddie Jordan, the team's fiery Irish owner, frantically searched for available drivers. He called everyone. Established F1 drivers were already contracted. Young prospects were committed elsewhere. Jordan was desperate. Then came a phone call from Mercedes-Benz that would change Formula One history forever. Jochen Neerpasch, head of Mercedes Motorsport, had a suggestion. There's a young German driver in our sports car program. Very fast, very talented. His name is Michael Schumacher. Jordan was skeptical. Schumacher had no Formula One experience. He was racing sports cars for Mercedes, showing promise but nothing extraordinary on paper. But Jordan had no other options, and Mercedes agreed to pay Schumacher's fee of $150,000 for the race. Eddie Jordan agreed reluctantly. Fine, bring him, but if he crashes my car in practice, he's out immediately. Schumacher received the call on Tuesday, August 20th. He was at home in Germany when his manager, Willy Weber, delivered the news. You're racing in Formula One this weekend, Belgian Grand Prix, Spa-Francorchamps. Schumacher's first reaction was disbelief, then panic, then overwhelming excitement. This was the chance every racing driver dreams about, the opportunity to prove himself on the biggest stage in motorsport. There was just one massive problem. Schumacher had never driven Spa-Francorchamps before. The Belgian circuit is 7 kilometers long, featuring the famous Eau Rouge corner, the fast sweeping Blanchiment, and the treacherous Pouhon section. It's one of the most challenging, most dangerous circuits in Formula One. Most drivers spend years learning its secrets. Schumacher had 3 days. He arrived at Spa on Thursday morning, wide-eyed and nervous. The Jordan team garage was chaotic with last-minute preparations. The mechanics barely glanced at the young German. Another pay driver, they assumed, someone who bought the seat for one race and would disappear after crashing. Gary Anderson, Jordan's technical director, handed Schumacher his race suit without ceremony. Don't crash the car. That's your only job. Thursday evening, Schumacher walked the circuit on foot, studying every corner, memorizing every braking point. He talked to Jordan mechanics who knew Spa, asking endless questions about racing lines and gear ratios. He watched onboard footage from previous races obsessively. By Friday morning, he had mentally driven Spa hundreds of times, but mental preparation and real driving are completely different. Friday practice began at 9 a.m. sharp. Schumacher climbed into the Jordan 191 for the first time in a race weekend. The cockpit felt foreign, the tight cockpit. His hands gripped the steering wheel nervously. Team manager Trevor Foster's voice came over the radio. Take it easy first few laps. Learn the circuit. Don't be a hero. Schumacher acknowledged and drove out of the pit lane into his Formula One career. The first lap was cautious, exploratory. Schumacher navigated Eau Rouge carefully, respecting its fearsome reputation. Through Blanchiment at reduced speed. Learning braking points at bus stop chicane. The lap time was unimpressive, nearly 4 seconds off the pace. The Jordan mechanics exchanged knowing glances. Another slow pay driver. But Schumacher's second lap was different. Faster through Beau Rouge, more committed through Puhan, harder braking into the chicane. The lap time dropped by 2 seconds. Third lap, faster again. Fourth lap, faster still. By the 10th lap, Schumacher was within 1 second of teammate Andrea De Cesaris' time. The mechanics stopped talking and started watching the timing screens with growing interest. Trevor Foster came on the radio. "Michael, that's good pace. You can push more if comfortable." Schumacher's response was calm and confident. "The car feels good. I'm still learning, but I can go faster." The next lap, he went 3/10 quicker than De Cesaris. The Jordan garage erupted in surprise. Who was this kid? Friday afternoon practice brought even more improvement. Schumacher consistently matched De Cesaris' times, sometimes beating him. His feedback to the engineers was incredibly detailed and precise. "The car understeers in turn 5. I need more front wing. The rear is loose in Puhan. Can we adjust the differential?" Gary Anderson listened in amazement. This wasn't a rookie talking. This was someone who understood cars at a sophisticated level. By Friday evening, the paddock was buzzing with whispers. Jordan's new driver was surprisingly fast. Teams began asking questions. Who is this Schumacher? Where did he come from? Eddie Jordan started receiving phone calls from rival team bosses asking about his new driver's contract status. Jordan brushed them off. The kid had done 1 day of practice. Let's see what happens in qualifying. Saturday qualifying began with cloudy skies and cool temperatures. The session format was simple: 1 hour to set your fastest lap. Schumacher sat in the Jordan garage, visualizing his qualifying lap repeatedly. He knew the circuit perfectly now. Every gear change, every apex, every braking point. He was ready. Schumacher waited until 30 minutes into the session before going out, letting others lay down rubber on the racing line. When he finally emerged, the Jordan was set up perfectly based on Friday's data. His outlap was focused and precise. Then came the flying lap that would shock Formula One. Through La Source hairpin perfectly. Maximum attack through Eau Rouge, carrying more speed than seemed possible for someone who'd learned the corner just yesterday. The car was on the absolute limit, but perfectly controlled. Through the fast Kemmel Straight at maximum speed, braking hard into Les Combes, the car stable and precise. Through Puhan with absolute commitment, into Blanchimont flat out. The final chicane taken with millimeter precision. He crossed the line, and the time flashed 7th position. 7th on his first Formula One qualifying session ever at Spa-Francorchamps, one of the most difficult circuits in the world. Beating established drivers with years of experience, beating his teammate De Cesaris by half a second. The Jordan garage was in complete shock. Eddie Jordan stood speechless, staring at the timing screen. This wasn't just talent. This was something exceptional, something rare. The other teams noticed immediately. Flavio Briatore, team principal of Benetton, watched the qualifying from his motorhome. When Schumacher's time came up 7th, Briatore grabbed his phone and called his lawyer immediately. "Find out everything about Jordan's contract with this Schumacher. Everything. I want him from Monza." The hunt had begun. Race morning brought nervous energy for Schumacher. Qualifying 7th was one thing. Finishing the race was another. He had never driven a Formula One car for full race distance. The physical demands would be enormous. But more importantly, he had never dealt with the stress of an actual Grand Prix start with 25 other cars fighting for position into the first corner. The pre-race briefing was routine. Jordan mechanics explained race procedures, pit stop protocols, and radio communication systems. Schumacher absorbed everything like a sponge. On the grid, he sat in the Jordan trying to control his breathing. His heart pounded. This was it, his Formula One race debut. Everything he had worked for his entire life came down to the next 90 minutes. The formation lap proceeded smoothly. Schumacher kept the tires warm, tested his brakes, and lined up in 7th position on the grid. Around him, legendary names: Ayrton Senna in the McLaren on pole position, Alain Prost nearby, Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell, Gerhard Berger. Icons of the sport surrounded him. And here was Michael Schumacher about to race against his heroes. The lights went out. The Belgian Grand Prix began.
Schumacher's start was clean and aggressive. He maintained 7th position through La Source, avoiding the chaos behind. Through Eau Rouge on the first racing lap with other cars around him, he drove with maturity that defied his inexperience. Into Les Combes, still in 7th. The opening laps were perfect. But Formula One is cruel to newcomers. On lap 1, approaching the bus stop chicane, Schumacher felt something wrong with the clutch. The pedal felt different. Engagement was inconsistent. He radioed the pit, "I have a problem with the clutch, it's slipping." Gary Anderson's heart sank. Not now. Not when the kid was driving so brilliantly. Schumacher continued pushing despite the mechanical issue. Lap after lap, he fought the clutch problem, trying to manage it while maintaining racing speed. But the clutch was deteriorating rapidly. The car became harder to drive with every corner. On lap 5, approaching Eau Rouge, the clutch failed completely. The Jordan's gearbox wouldn't engage. The car slowed dramatically, coasting. Schumacher pulled off the racing line and stopped at the side of the track. His Formula One race debut was over after just 5 laps. He sat in the dead car for several seconds, helmet still on, processing the disappointment. His first F1 race, finished before it really began. But then logic took over. He had qualified 7th. He had driven brilliantly in practice. Everyone had seen his talent. This wasn't failure. This was the beginning. Back in the Jordan garage, the mood was strangely optimistic despite the retirement. Eddie Jordan approached Schumacher in the motorhome. "Michael, you drove fantastically this weekend. I want you for the rest of the season. We'll sort out a contract." Schumacher's face lit up. A full-time Formula One seat. This was better than he'd dreamed.
But that conversation would never lead to a contract, because while Jordan and Schumacher discussed the future, Flavio Briatore was already executing his plan. The Benetton team principal had contacted Schumacher's manager, Willy Weber, immediately after qualifying. The offer was simple and aggressive. Michael drives for Benetton at Monza next weekend. Whatever Jordan is paying, we'll pay more. This is non-negotiable. Monday morning brought disaster for Eddie Jordan. Schumacher's manager called with devastating news. Michael was driving for Benetton at Monza, not Jordan. The contract for Spa had only been for 1 race. There was no legal obligation to continue with Jordan. Briatore had moved faster, offered more money, and stolen Jordan's driver before the ink was dry on any new deal. Eddie Jordan was furious, absolutely apoplectic. He called Schumacher a traitor, he called Briatore a thief, he threatened legal action but had no legal grounds. The Spa contract was for 1 race only. Schumacher was free to sign elsewhere. Jordan had discovered a future world champion and lost him within 48 hours. The paddock was shocked by the aggressive move. Stealing a driver after just 1 race was unprecedented. But Briatore didn't care about paddock politics. He had seen something special in Schumacher's qualifying performance. 7th place at Spa on debut wasn't luck, it was genius, and Briatore wanted that genius driving for Benetton, not Jordan. At Monza 2 weeks later, Michael Schumacher lined up on the grid in Benetton colours, his Jordan career already a distant memory. He would spend the next 3 years with Benetton, winning 2 world championships. Then he would move to Ferrari and become the greatest driver in Formula One history. But it all started at Spa 1991, with 1 incredible qualifying lap in a Jordan that lasted just 1 weekend. Eddie Jordan never truly forgave Schumacher or Briatore. Years later, even after Schumacher had won 7 world championships, Jordan would still tell the story of how he discovered the greatest talent in Formula One and had him stolen away before the relationship could begin. "I found him," Jordan would say, with a mixture of pride and bitterness, "and Flavio took him." That's Formula One. For Schumacher, Spa 1991 remained the launching pad. Without that 1 brilliant qualifying lap, Benetton might never have noticed him. Without qualifying 7th on his debut, teams might have dismissed him as another decent driver. But that 7th position proved he was something different, something special. It was the performance that changed his life and eventually changed Formula One forever. The clutch failure that ended his race after 5 laps became a footnote. Nobody remembers the retirement. Everyone remembers the qualifying. 7th position at Spa-Francorchamps on debut, the moment a future 7-time world champion announced himself to the world. The weekend that proved natural talent, when given an opportunity, can shine immediately and brilliantly. Spa 1991 taught Formula One an important lesson. Never underestimate a determined young driver with raw talent. Michael Schumacher arrived as an unknown. He left as the most wanted driver in the paddock. 1 weekend, 1 circuit he'd never driven, 1 qualifying session. That's all it took to prove greatness.